What's up, guys? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more of our videos. Also, make sure you follow us all over social media so you don't miss any of our content or show announcements. New York is a team that right now I'm kind of considering beneath Cleveland, but I do think they're a team that in the long run I could view higher than Cleveland. New York is hitting an offensive level here in the last couple of weeks that's kind of terrifying. They've basically been operating around a 130 offensive rating for the last couple of weeks. And I thought that the game in Denver was such a classic example of what makes them so tough to guard, which is the unique combination of like a superstar that consistently draws two to the ball, and then a bunch of dudes who are professional off-ball scorers. Mikal Bridges has been scoring off the ball since he was catching skip passes and pick and roll from Chris Paul, 3, 4, 5 years ago, right? Like OG Anunoby has turned into one of the most gifted, it's kind of looks a little clunky sometimes, but he's such a gifted, he's such a gifted shot creator when a dude's chasing him off the 3-point line. They have so many smart players in that 4-on-3 that inevitably comes from every single time Jalen Brunson brings the ball up the floor, that they're just impossible to guard. The thing that's bothering me is they literally have not played more than 1 or 2 good games of defense this entire season. Even in their wins, they're not guarding. They had a win streak where they won, 4 out of 5, and they were at a 119 defensive rating in those 4 wins against Washington and Brooklyn and just some really limited teams. And I have been trying to investigate this Knicks defense problem for a while, and I'm so curious to hear your opinion on it because we haven't talked about it yet. But my initial impression is it's a combination of some effort, focus, energy stuff. Specifically, some of their perimeter defenders are not having good perimeter defensive seasons. Mm-hmm. And then 2, there's a little bit of a schematic thing with Tibbs that's driving me crazy, which is they still are not doing a ton of switching, even when it's OG and Mikal and Josh in the action. They're still doing a lot of overhelping and lingering that's completely unnecessary. There's some of it that's unavoidable. Teams are hunting Brunson and Cat a lot. I want to be clear. That's how teams are looking to attack the Knicks. But it extends so much further to that because my thing is the effort and energy piece, I think, will improve in the long run. And that, to me, is the gap between Cleveland. Cleveland's practicing being a championship team. Say what you want about whether or not they actually are. They're practicing being a championship team. That is a dead serious basketball team in their daily process. Knicks, not so much. That's definitely something that they can clean up there. There's no doubt that Cat and Jalen Brunson are going to get attacked a great amount over the course of the rest of the season. But there's some self-inflicted damage there, and their 3-point defense metrics are really bad. They're giving up a ton of volume on threes. They're giving up high percentage. They're giving up a lot of spot-up opportunities in general. They are not guarding the 3-point line well. And for all the talk about Cat as a rim protector, their paint defense has been pretty solid. So what is your takeaway on what's going wrong with the Knicks defense?
So they have looked better recently. They have won 5 out of 6 here, and it's largely due to their offense. What I will say about their defense is that I think that in part it could get fixed a little bit with Mitchell Robinson coming back. So let's look at the positive here first and just say, hey, a lot of what I'm going to say could get solved with Mitch coming back. A big issue for me personally is that Karl Towns is a bad drop coverage defender. And early in the season, they basically played only drop coverage. Over the last 2 weeks, I felt like I've seen them experiment a little bit more with having him come out to the level a little bit higher. They will occasionally, not regularly, but at times, I've seen them switch. It could have just been a peel switch situation, but it felt like kind of an early peel switch to me. I will hear out that they are adjusting and experimenting and that Tibbs is trying to find different answers. It hasn't gone well. Let's be clear about that too. It hasn't gone super great to this point, but I do think that they have at least tried to solve the problem. Towns is a really, really bad drop coverage defender. I think that he doesn't really understand his angles. He doesn't really understand his depth. He often gets caught in no man's land where the roller will get behind him and he's not really actually contesting the guard, and the guard is able to just get to a pull up a little bit too easily or have that lob over the top of him. The second piece of it for me is you mentioned the perimeter defense. I actually think Mikal Bridges has been quite poor to this point defensively. In general, I think he has not been very good this season. Offensively, the shot is obviously a whole other conversation, but
did you see how many times Jamal Murray left him completely wide open, just not paying attention? He just was missing every shot in that nugget. That could have been a worse blowout.
Teams are going to do that with them. Like they're going to force him to shoot. Mikal's a crazy worker, and I hope that he comes available here and like comes around and is able to shoot it. Like I've never heard anything but like Mikal Bridges is like an awesome human being. So like when I say what I'm about to say, like I don't say this with joy, right?
Why are you being so negative, Sam?
He's been really bad on defense. He has been, the big issue for me is that he has been incapable. When you watched him get through screens when he was younger, he like kind of used that length and like slithered around them and like found different ways to get back into recovery. Right now, he's getting caught on screens for that extra split second. I feel like his hips aren't quite as flexible as they used to be when he was a little bit younger. And he's just getting caught trying to get up over the top. He's a guy that has super long limbs, super long arms, but also a really high waist. So when he tries to get around screens, he has to like really open up his hips and then like open around and like get back around the screen. And I think he's getting clipped on those a little bit more often than what we've seen in the past from him. And that's an issue for them right now. If he's not an elite level perimeter defender, if I'm being completely honest, I think he's been a below average perimeter defender this season. I will hear out, that he's been average or whatever, but I haven't really seen that personally. Let's assume.
Well, they're not getting any stops, Sam. They're not getting any stops, even against bad teams.
They're not. But like, if you want to say he'll get to average, I still think that's a problem for them because then you have you have OG Anunoby, who's a great defender. You have Josh Hart, who's like an above average defender who works his balls off and like flies around the court, right? You have an average defender in Mikal, and then, Kat and Jalen are just guys that teams will attack relentlessly. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have that extra great defender with those two, to me, it's a real problem. So, the way that you phrased this, whenever we decided, hey, what are we going to do? Are you higher or lower on these teams than you were in the preseason in terms of them contending for a title? My answer for the Knicks right now is actually lower.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
And in part, it's because of Bridges. And I would really like to see him fix it, but he's not playing well on either end right now. And like when that deal got done, I was literally live, like doing a mock draft show with Bryce, my podcast partner. And we were just like stunned and befuddled when that deal happened. And then we got the price and I was like, man, I like Mikal, and I knew that the price was going to be big, and I still thought that was too much to pay for him.
Superstar prices, man.
They paid superstar price for a guy that is a top, when he's at his best, right? A top 40 player in the league in terms of like impacting winning, top 50 player in the league, whatever it is. And it was too much, I thought. But at the end of the day, they're going to get Mitchell back. We're going to see if that can really solve some of the issues that they have defensively, because they can play him and drop, and then you can get Cat back to play the role that he was in Minnesota. It makes life a little bit easier, I think, for everybody. And that could really go a long way towards solving their defense. And that could make me, in the end, a little bit higher on them. But given that Mitchell's injury situation seems a little bit questionable in terms of when he'll be back, what he will look like when he gets back, I am a little bit lower on them than I was in the preseason. I am.
Yeah, it's interesting. If Cat could just guard Jokic in the post every single possession, I think he'd be considered an all defense guy. But unfortunately, there's a lot more to guarding NBA teams. I like the idea of Mitchell Robinson just kind of like putting them into a lot more natural positions on a lot of like, first of all, Mitch is like one of my favorite bigs in the league at getting to the level of screens and contesting pull-up shooters. He just has such a natural gift for it, the timing, and he's got such quick leaping and long arms.
Yep.
And then I like Cat more as a low man than I do as a ball screen defender. And then the Josh Hart stuff, like Josh Hart brings so much good to the table, but like, and there's no doubt that like from a spacing standpoint, there would be some complications with Mitch. It's not as simple as it looks though, because one, teams aren't guarding Josh Hart on the perimeter. I have seen so many teams this year put their center on Josh Hart for extended stretches and just sag him into the paint anyway. And I think that Mitch can bring back some of their offensive rebounding identity in a lot of ways too. He's just always been super, super good at that. So like with the Knicks, I think Cleveland is a clear number 2 right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if I felt differently in 2-3 months if they just kind of figured some of that additional stuff out.